Lifestyle actually influence how people see you. So if you're a rich man, you always drive while other people walk. You have machines to pump your water all the way from the, yes, from the river to your house, while other people walk and use gourds. People whose lives are not as convenient who tend to think that these people who can actually afford, not even afford, people who have, it's beyond even affordability, people who have the capability to use technology to make their lives more convenient. Africans looking very highly, looking up to white people. There's no difference in us. The difference is in the head. You know, the culture in Kenya is inclusionary. You are good until we prove you are not a good person. Culture in the Western world is you are bad, is exclusionary. You are bad until we prove you are good.
One family, one spark, one child for all plan. We go together hand in hand. For all plan. Love like that can move the land. Through every storm, through every plan. We shine, we rise. For all plan. For all plan. For all plan.
My name is Marcellus and welcome to the Far Out Clan YouTube channel. In the most recent video, we did a video about how the Mennonite community see or react, or what's their perspective, or what do they think about interracial relationship. Now, to just set the background, if you're watching this video for the first time, I grew up in Kenya, migrated to the US, and I married my wife, Charity, who comes from an Amish Mennonite background. So last video, we talked about what their culture thought of our relationship and our marriage. And we get a feeling that majority of the people who are watching these videos, we don't know, but we feel we have a big Mennonite audience, and of course, to a higher degree, they would know what they think about these relationships, but they wouldn't necessarily know about what my culture, what my people think about this relationship. And again, in these matters, it's very hard to be certain. It's very hard to definitely describe a culture or people as a collective and determine that this is what they feel about a certain topic. So I'm going to use my experiences or instances to explain or to inform what I'm going to say. I might be wrong, I might be right, but for the purpose of this video, yeah, I'm going to use my experiences. Let's see what we're gonna have. Again, I haven't planned for this video. These videos are usually we just put on the camera and start filming, because we feel in that sense we react to the moment and we are honest without being corrupted by the idea of, hey, we're speaking to a camera and so on, so on, so. So I haven't practiced. I might leave things out, but I'll try my best to explain everything. Okay, I really like telling my story, especially historical stories of my background. So I'll go back to the history of my parents and I believe that is gonna inform how my people react to white people, their perspective of white people, and that definitely informs what they're gonna think or how they're gonna react to interracial marriages and relationships. So my parents, my father and my mom, their parents were the people who actually inherited or attained independence in the country of Kenya, because Kenya attained its independence. Kenya is a country in Africa, so if I might say, attained located in the eastern part of Africa, the Horn of Africa, around that area. It's attained its independence in 1964 and 1963, and in 1964 became a republic. Now, this is a very young country. The administrators who were running the country are white people who would eventually, most of them would leave the country. And I don't know if I'll be right to say lots of the modern ways of doing things were introduced by the white people in Kenya. And from that up to date, people think, or it's engraved in their brain that in their brains that white people are very, very, very capable when it comes to technological advances. So my dad grew up in Kisii. I mean, from a very, I wouldn't want to say, at this point, I don't even know what is poor, what is rich, because they had big land. My grandfather from my dad's side had two wives. They had big lands, a lot of cattle. But then I would say, in the modern sense, the standards of living were not, the standards of living then, you'd say they were not as good. But here's the catch: the quality of life would definitely be better in some sense, because you did not have debt. There was a lot of food, for example, where they grew up in Kisii, and so on and so forth. So that's not the topic of this video. And they all both interacted with that period when the white people were living, and of course they passed down to their coming generation. Now my father, stories about colonization, stories about white people, and when I talk about this, I mean it in a positive way. I don't mean it in a bad way. Somebody commented in one of the videos when I was telling like the history of Kenya, about how, and that wasn't even my intention, about how when white people migrate, they're called colonizers, and when black people migrate, they're called immigrants. That wasn't the case. Yeah, we are in this channel. We are apolitical, meaning we are not political, and we do not seek to criticize or undermine any person or institution. We are just telling our stories and how we interact with history and one another. Okay, coming back to the story of my mom. So my grandfather from my mom's side, Kalenjin, grew up in Kitale, a place called Mile Nane. And my grandfather was a pastor and learned to speak English. I mean, then most people would not be fluent at English. Most people would not even understand it, or converse in English. They would not be good at it. That is how we were told. And he befriended he used to minister with a lot of white people before independence. So when independence came, there was a white guy where he's from. who actually had, I'm not exactly sure the number of acreage of land, but had big land and a nice house. The house is still there to date. My uncle is the one who lives in the house, I mean, who inherited it. And so the white guy left all his property to my grandfather, my Kalenjin grandfather. And because he interacted with them, and of course, their ways of doing things were way different from the ways Africans would do things. And because they were the ones who controlled the economies, and they were capitalist, and they had wealth, of course, the way they lived would be, there would be a stark difference between the way they lived and the way Africans lived. And lifestyle actually influence how people see you. So if you're a rich man, you always drive while other people walk. You have machines to pump your water all the way from the, yes, from the river to your house, while other people walk and use gourds made from, what are these? The pumpkin fruits. You know, like in Africa, we have different kind of pumpkins. You know, the pumpkins that are here in America. No, it's actually not pumpkins. There's a plant that resembles a pumpkin and smells really awful, but looks exactly like a pumpkin plant. But it produces fruits big as pumpkins, but then it's shaped in a way that it has a neck. So traditionally, people would cut it and prepare it, and they would use it to store milk and maybe water and such. So of course, if you have those differences, people whose lives are not as convenient who tend to think that these people who can actually afford, not even afford, people who have, it's beyond even affordability, people who have the capability to use technology to make their lives more convenient. So you'd have Africans looking very highly, looking up to white people. And so my grandfather inherits that property. And of course, my mom grew up in a nice, had a nice life. And that is actually why she was among the few people to go to teaching school, and they ended up becoming a teacher. It's sad that in African traditional culture, then before new constitutional dispensations were made, women were not allowed to inherit property. But anyway, I'm not complaining. That is just history again. So my mom's view of white people would definitely be that of high esteem and respect because of that history. My dad's view of white people would be of high esteem and respect because of the history, how their parents saw the white people, and how they influenced them, their attitudes towards them. Now you have, and these have no part in, you have the people who grew up in the central part of Kenya who actually credited for fighting for the independence of Kenya. Who, I mean, it's said that from history, Mau was actually a national-wide campaign. Mau was the campaign spearheaded by African nationalists and waged guerrilla warfare against the Britons in Kenya so that the country attains its independence. And of course, they were located around the central part of Kenya. And the capital city of Kenya, Nairobi, is in the central part of Kenya. So you'd have all of the British resources, like most of it in that area. So you'd actually say where the fighting took place, the fighting was vicious, was in Nairobi. So the people who were at the front, Nairobi, central part of Kenya, not only Nairobi, who are the forefront or who suffered the brand, who bear the brand of what am I even saying? Anyway, the people who suffered most would be the Kikuyu people. And now, so the way they fought the white people and the way they were put into camps, so the parents would actually pass down that attitude of struggle and whatever. I'm not really sure about this, but still, so I'm not sure how young Kikuyus, my generation, will think about it. But of course, I've interacted, and there's no really. People ask me here, especially when I came. Lots of people used to ask me, "What tribe are you from?" And I would insistently repeat, "Hey, I'm tribeless." Okay, because I do understand human beings. Our minds have a propensity to has a tribal, has a tribal. We have a tribal mindset whereby if we are competing, we tend to with other people or groups, we tend to go to our groups to find security and survival. So what was I saying? What I mean is there's no really a difference between me and a Kikuyu guy in Kenya. I mean, my dad is Kisi, my mom is Kalenjin, so I grew up in those two tribes, and I think that taught me to be highly tolerant towards other people and actually accept that, hey, there's no difference in us, the difference is in the head. Okay? Just because we speak a different language and you look exactly like me, there's no difference really. And now that even taught me to learn and accept and realize that there's no difference between a black person and a white person. Okay, so it started from that until I grew. And when I was young, I was like really uncomfortable being a black person because I interacted with white people and Indians, and I did not like them. I've explained this in my other video, in one of my other video. So that's it. So I'll come. Let's go to explaining this very fast. I don't want to bore you guys. So because of that history, you'd find that we are conditioned at the back of our mind. We are conditioned to believe that to have a high respect for the capability of the white man. But when I was growing up, I remember mentioning to my colleagues all the way through, hey, you know what? I'd really love one day to not this, to marry a white lady, and because yeah, I love adventure, I love exploring and all that. And they were like, thought I was crazy to begin with. Where are you gonna find a white lady in Kenya? I mean, then not to mention that, you know, Africans have got their own way, their culture, and our culture sometimes has its own strength. Okay, like let alone now that we're having the rise of feminism and women want to be independent. So just to mention that, so in Africa, women would be subservient to a man. The same way you have the way Mennonites and Amish people are an exception in the Western culture, where women are actually subservient to a man. So my friends would actually strive to find a woman who would be subservient rather than dominant, because Kenya is a patriarchal society, and to have a woman who is matriarchal, that is a change that that most people don't want change. That is just as simple. So my friends would highly see, would actually perceive as getting married to a white woman as a disaster, because that would eventually lead to a divorce, because not there would be a lot of cultural differences, and above all, a woman raised in the Western world will almost certainly be an independent woman or a dominant woman, almost always. And our discussions, especially, remember my friend, one of my good friend, he's now in China doing his master's in law. We were discussing about the issue of having women who are housewives, and he was of the idea that he wants his wife to be a housewife, and he thinks that would work very well. And at that moment we were like, oh man, this doesn't make sense, as two individuals in the university where we are pumped with the idea of women becoming independent. And for some reason I'm just looking at that, and it felt like a far-fetched idea, because now Kenya is becoming a society where women want to be independent. If you talk about a woman being a housewife, it would be a very bad, what word should I use, baby? It would be a very bad word to use, like an abusive word. So if you're in Kenya and a woman like offends you, just call them, you're a housewife. All hell is gonna break loose. Now that I come into a culture where all the women, when they have kids, housewives, I'm like, oh man, this is actually a reality. And this is actually something that we had never thought about. Anyway, let's go slowly. So my friends and we at that time would see the greatest risk to marrying a white woman would be having a dominant woman, and then being from a patriarchal society where men are dominant, that wouldn't work well. And then you'd have here and there, or people, I mean, it's not as common, but there are those people, and I don't want to blow out this. There are those people who feel that, or who are of the school of thought that marriage, a mixed cross-cultural marriage, would be driven by material material, what should I say, would be most driven by, would be materialistically be driven, if I'm not, yeah, so if I might say, and because of the difference in economies. Who is this calling me? Let me, somebody is calling from, yeah, I received like 10 calls from different numbers in Oregon, and I'm afraid to say most of them are usually scammers. I've never been called so much in my life by people with different numbers. So if you live in the US, you know that. So that rarely happens in a country like Kenya. You don't get these problems where people call you. I mean, people are conditioned here. Even in business, I'm having trouble calling back my clients, especially when I get my clients through a funnel. You wouldn't get to people because people are just so annoyed. People don't want to take calls anymore. Back to the video before, you're not going to eat my wallet, it's dirty. Yeah, this is good. So some people, because of the difference in economies and the dollar or the euro or the Chinese yuan, I don't know if that is stronger than the currencies in African countries, would see that as a means to gain material wealth. So, and this is what most people in the Western world fear. And it's not a lot of people. I mean, come to think of it, it's just a select individual. But from my, I don't know much about them. I don't know if they joke sometimes, but definitely when we were discussing such topics, people raise such topics. I mean, yeah, I'm aware of those facts. But what I'm saying is, people would have a very high degree of respect for white people. Like, for example, you see, and I've told this story before. When my wife was first visiting me in Kenya, her family was so worried. So her her eldest brother came to visit with her, and her eldest brother was very, I felt like they were investigating me because they wanted to see everything, from where I live, from how I commute to work and everything. So I remember it was a nice Friday morning. It was my turn to deliver a sermon at the law firm, and it went really well. And I had spoken to my how should I call it? I had spoken to the partner, the law firm. I mean, the owner of the law firm, my boss, and told them that, hey, I'll be having something from noon. I'd like to be excused and borrow leave out of work. So they came, and the secretary called, hey, don't bite me, they're so sharp. The secretary called me and he was like, hey, Marcellus, you have visitors here from the US. And I'm like, oh man, they're here. So they came, they greeted everybody in the law firm. They wanted to know who is who and who is that. And what am I even saying? I'm going on rabbit trails. Oh, my point was, I'm coming back to the law firm. Now, after they left, I mean, like, oh, people were like, oh, this is a mzungu. This is like, that means this is a white person already. And by that, they mean, I mean, from how I felt and how I know is, they give you a high regard of respect, because when somebody says you're a mzungu, they mean you keep time. They mean you are smart. They mean you're capable. And it's not very often that you'd find someone marrying or having a white girlfriend, or a white boyfriend or fiance or husband and so forth, or wife. So they give you a high degree of respect. I mean, and there's so many instances where I was working with charity, or how my parents reacted to them, how they talked about it, how people talk about it. So overall, I'll say with a high degree of certainty that white people are highly respected, and interracial relationship are actually almost unimaginable, to the point that when someone in a family finds a spouse, the family is usually so very ecstatic about it and excited and looking forward to it. So I have a cousin in a cousin who got married to a white person, and I remember my mom was invited to the pre-wedding. So they went, and it was like, it was such a big fair, and people wouldn't stop talking about it, full of praises. And You are distracting daddy from making videos. Yeah, you. Are you? Are you? So anyway, my point is, bottom line is, the bottom line is, interracial relationships are highly, to the point that are highly viewed to the point that it's almost, what word should I use? Divine. That is what I know from a country like Kenya. I don't know how people would behave towards such relationships in other parts of the country, and their histories with colonization, and how that influences their culture towards interracial relationships. But we have to address, I've just remember that I have to address the elephant in the room, the idea of people being afraid of scammers, or people being afraid that they are being used by Africans in the name of love. And so I haven't looked into this, but I'm not blind to that fact. You'll have people who would be like right now, I have so many people who've messaged me, or who the first thing they see, or they tell me when they realize that, oh, I'm married to a white person, would be, hey, you know what, connect. And there's so many of them, come to think of it, there's so many of them who be like, oh man, connect me with a white person. I also want to be married with a white person. So I wouldn't be the judge of that, because they usually just say jokingly, and I also do understand that there is an aura that comes with two people from different communities, from different cultures, black and white. And in Africa, people, it's not only people from the Western cultures who are considered white in a greater sense, because you'll find if you're Chinese or if you're Asian, that would also be considered in the same way. Okay? So from a very young age, I always loved the idea of interracial relationship, like, different colors, one people. I believe there's a song about that. There's a song like that by Lucky Dube. Lucky Dube is I'm a big fan of Lucky Dube. So it's a phenomenon that I would want to believe that most people want to be associated with. The other thing you have to consider about interracial, the approach of Kenyans or Africans, I'll say Kenyans, towards interracial relationships is, the culture in Kenya is inclusionary. And the culture inclusionary in the sense that you are good until we prove you are not a good person. So the culture in the Western world, I'll talk about the US, I mean, how I've seen it, my experiences here, is you are bad, is exclusionary. You are bad until we prove you are good. Okay? So that also affects the way people view the interracial relationships, because cross-cultural relationship, forgive me for that term, I believe it offends some people, because we are all from the human race. So Kenyans would approach this issue with the mindset that, oh man, it's good, I mean, black, white, looks really good, looks fine, oh, a mixed kid, that is beautiful, until something is problematic, where you're having problem, then they'll say, oh man, it's not turning out good. But the Western culture, for example, here in the US, and I believe it's also in Europe, even in Asia, would be this is bad until we prove it's good. Because if there's a guy from Africa or a lady from Africa who is marrying into these cultures, the friends, the community, the society will be like, this person is bad. They are not industrious. They are lazy. They're thieves. They're like blah blah blah. I mean, I'm just saying. I'm not. I'm giving examples of how people would tend to think until we decide or we've investigated and found out that this person from Africa is actually, it's just a nice human being. So it's just the way people see the people's approach to different issues, their historical experiences, how they were, the teachings that they've had about different societies. But I can almost certainly say with a high degree of confidence that in Kenya, from my culture, in cross-cultural relationship would actually be really, really valued, cherished, coveted, and wanted. So I believe, yeah, I did not prepare for this video. I don't want to prepare for any of the other videos. I want to speak honestly from the heart. I want to fumble so that you guys can get what I mean. And I really want to, I really like talking to people, making a difference, inspiring people, encouraging people, and yeah, so I don't see the sense of sitting down and planning this video and saying what I've planned. I just want to speak from my heart. So yeah, I better go feed this little guy. Thank you for watching this video and see you in the next one. Bye. No. What? You wanna be a superstar? Sing something. Different colors, one people. Different colors, one people.